She stared me dead in the eyes and said, "If you were loyal, you wouldn't be job hunting." I wanted to scream. 3 years. 3 years of sacrifice, and this is how it ends. But she didn't know I had proof and a plan. Where are you watching this from? Drop your city in the comments. I love seeing how far these stories reach. And please support us in bringing more intense drama by clicking on the subscribe button. Let's get into it. I never thought loyalty could become a weapon used against me. My name is Maria, and for 3 years I gave everything to my job. I worked late without overtime, skipped vacations, picked up the slack when others dropped the ball. All for the promise of next quarter and budget adjustments. Every time I asked about a raise, my boss, Shannon, gave me the same tight-lipped smile and said, "Let's revisit it in a few months." 3 years. No raise. No promotion. Just promises. But this story isn't about disappointment. It's about betrayal. And what happened when I finally stood up for myself. It started on a Tuesday. I remember because it was raining. One of those slow, miserable drizzles that somehow makes fluorescent office lights feel even colder. I was sitting at my desk, red-eyed from another night of working until midnight. My inbox was full. Shannon had already forwarded me 3 tasks that weren't even in my department. I didn't complain. I never did. But something snapped that day. I opened my work portal, clicked on my pay history, and stared at the same number I'd seen since 2021. My chest tightened. I had grown the department, trained 2 of Shannon's new hires, even saved the company thousands by redesigning one of our reporting systems. And still, nothing. That's when I did it. I opened LinkedIn and started scrolling. At first it was just curiosity. I wasn't even sure I wanted to leave. I loved some of the people I worked with, and honestly, I was scared. But then I saw a listing for a role that matched mine with $15,000 more per year. And the company was known for promoting internally. I clicked apply. My hands trembled. Felt like cheating. Isn't that ridiculous? I submitted 3 applications that week. Quietly. Cautiously. Only on breaks. I kept doing my job like nothing had changed. But internally, everything had. I was beginning to hope again. And hope sometimes makes people careless. It was Thursday when Shannon called me into her office. Her tone was sharp but polite. "Close the door." I did. She folded her hands on the desk, smiled with no warmth, and asked, "Is there something you'd like to tell me?" My heart dropped. I said, "About what?" And then, she pulled out a printed screenshot. One of my job applications. Internal notes, resume, everything. I felt cold all over. "Where did you get that?" I asked, trying not to sound panicked. She didn't answer. Instead, she leaned forward and said, "If you're job hunting, Maria, maybe this place isn't the right fit for you anymore." I could barely speak. I wanted to scream, "Of course I'm job hunting. You denied every raise I asked for." But all I managed to say was, "You've never once reviewed my salary." And her answer, "You never gave me a reason to." That broke something in me. But I stayed calm, quiet, controlled. I asked, "Are you firing me?" She said, "Not yet. But I need to know where your loyalty lies." And that's when I knew. This wasn't a conversation. It was a warning. And a trap. I walked out of her office with my heart pounding in my ears. For the rest of the day, Shannon hovered. She'd check in every hour. Ask random questions. Watched me like a hawk. I knew what she was doing. She was waiting for a misstep. Any reason to push me out without HR getting involved. I had to be smart. So I smiled. I finished every task. I backed up every file. And quietly, I started collecting evidence. Every email. Every budget delay. Every time I trained someone doing the same job for more money. Because if Shannon thought she could fire me without a fight, she was about to be very wrong. But then, something I didn't expect happened. I got an interview. It was with the company offering that $15,000 bump. Fully remote. Great reviews. The recruiter loved my resume and said I'd be perfect for the role. The catch. They needed a reference. From a current supervisor. And that's when the real game began. What would you do if your boss, who's threatened to fire you, is your only chance at landing a better job. Would you risk it? Or walk away quietly? Let me know in the comments. I really want to hear your thoughts. Because what happened next changed everything. I stared at the email for what felt like an hour. Hi Maria, we're excited to move forward. Please provide a reference from a current or recent supervisor within 48 hours. That job, the one I dreamed about for weeks, was now within reach. And the one person who could make or break it was Shannon. The same woman who sat me down 2 days ago and all but accused me of betrayal. I paced my apartment, hands shaking. My friends told me not to ask her. They said it was too risky, that she'd torpedo the whole thing out of spite. But the recruiter had been clear. Company policy. So I made a decision. I was going to do it. But on my terms. Friday morning I walked into the office with my head high and stomach churning. Shannon was in early, of course. He always was. I knocked lightly on her door and stepped in. She glanced up from her laptop, then immediately went back to typing. Cold, dismissive. But I wasn't backing down. Shannon, I said carefully, I'm being considered for a new role. They require a reference from a current supervisor. I'd like to list you. She blinked, then smirked, and said, So you are leaving. I kept my voice steady. I'm exploring options because I've reached a ceiling here. For 3 years I've worked hard. I've asked for growth. Nothing changed. She didn't deny it. She just leaned back and said, Why would I help you leave? I almost lost it. But I remembered something my mom always said, still water cuts the deepest. I stayed calm. Because, I said, you know I've done good work here. And if you tank this reference, I'll know exactly what it means. She narrowed her eyes. Are you threatening me? No, I replied. But I'm documenting everything. If I lose this opportunity because of retaliation, I'll take it to HR. With proof. I didn't have actual proof, yet. But she didn't know that. Shannon stared at me. I saw something flicker behind her eyes. Surprise? Anger? But finally she said, Fine. Send me the form. I'll be professional. I didn't thank her. I didn't smile. I just left. And sent the form within the hour. But I didn't feel relief. Not yet. Because knowing Shannon, this wasn't over. And I was right. That afternoon she made her first move. She called an all-hands meeting. One of those team realignments where everyone's roles get shuffled around. And guess whose duties got reassigned? My projects I'd worked on for months. Transferred to coworkers with half my experience. Shannon smiled as she did it. Just restructuring to match our long-term goals, she said. But everyone could see what it really was. A punishment. I went home that night feeling sick. Was this legal? Could she just ice me out like that? I didn't know. But I did know one thing. If I was going down, I wasn't going down quietly. So I reached out to someone I hadn't spoken to in over a year. A woman named Danielle. She used to work under Shannon. Quiet, smart, always kept to herself. One day she just disappeared. No goodbye email. No LinkedIn update. Nothing. I messaged her, not expecting a reply. But she wrote back within minutes. You too, huh? He said. We scheduled a call that night. And what she told me explained everything. Shannon had done this before. With her. Denied raises. Shifted duties. Then when Danielle started looking elsewhere, Shannon reported her for internal disruption and got her fired without severance. Danielle didn't fight it. She was exhausted. But she saved everything. Emails. Slack messages. Memos. And she sent them all to me. My jaw dropped as I read them. The exact same pattern. Same language. Same manipulation. Same punishment. I wasn't crazy. This wasn't personal. It was a tactic. That night I stayed up until 3 a.m. I compiled a document, timeline, emails, proof. I wrote a calm but firm letter. And I CC'd HR. The next morning I sent it. All of it. And I waited. The silence was unbearable. No response. No acknowledgement. Just tension. Shannon didn't speak to me all day. Then just before 4 p.m. I got a meeting invite. From HR. Subject line, follow-up workplace concerns. I clicked accept. And waited for the clock to hit 10 a.m. the next morning. Have you ever stood on a ledge knowing one step could change everything, but you're not sure if it'll be a fall or a flight? That's how I felt. As in that meeting. Either I was going to be protected, or I was going to be fired. The HR office was cold. Not in temperature, but in that stale, neutral way that makes you feel like you're already guilty even when you're the one asking for help. The HR rep's name was Doreen. She smiled when I walked in, but it didn't reach her eyes. I sat down across from her, the folder of documentation trembling slightly in my hands. She opened with, "Maria, thank you for coming in. I've reviewed the documents you submitted. We want to assure you this matter will be handled confidentially." I nodded. And then she said something that made my stomach twist. "But you do understand, of course, that exploring external opportunities while still employed can sometimes create friction." Friction? Was that HR speak for, "You brought this on yourself"? I swallowed hard and said, "Looking for better opportunities doesn't erase what I've been put through. Shannon has withheld raises, shifted my duties without notice, and now she's trying to sabotage my exit." Doreen didn't deny it. She just leaned forward slightly and said, "Have you considered that Shannon might feel blindsided? Managers invest a lot into their teams." I almost laughed. Invest? Shannon had invested in keeping me small. Overworked. Underpaid. But I kept my composure. I'm not here to speculate on her feelings. I'm here because I've been targeted, and I'm not the only one. I slid the printed emails from Danielle across the table. Silence. Doreen flipped through them slowly. Her expression didn't change, but I saw her eyes pause on certain lines. Like, let her sit tight until the next cycle. We can't justify a raise while we're onboarding. And if she starts looking elsewhere, document everything. We'll find a way to transition her out. Shannon had written those about Danielle. The same phrases she used on me. This wasn't a one-off. It was a pattern. And I was done playing along. After 10 minutes of tense silence, Doreen finally said, "We'll need time to investigate this. Please refrain from sharing any of this with colleagues in the meantime." Translation: be quiet. Sit still. But I nodded. Because I had one more card to play. Later that day, I received a short, cold email from Shannon. "Effective immediately, your responsibilities will be reassigned. Please limit your tasks to documentation and backlog cleanup." She was icing me out. Boxing me in. It was classic corporate suffocation. They wouldn't fire me, not until HR finished their investigation. But they'd make me feel so useless that I'd want to quit. And I almost did. Until something unexpected happened. I got a message. From Monica. Another former teammate. Her message was short. "Heard what's going on. If you need a witness, I've got stories." My heart pounded. I asked if she'd talk. And within an hour we were on the phone. Monica was calm but furious. She'd worked under Shannon for over a year back when our team was smaller. Shannon had praised her publicly but micromanaged her behind the scenes. When Monica started talking about career growth, Shannon restructured her position until it became unbearable. She left. But before she did, she saved everything. And now she was offering it to me. She even offered to speak to HR directly if needed. "You're not crazy," she told me. "She does this to anyone who threatens her control." By Friday, I had 4 witness statements. 4 women. Same story. Same tactics. And now, the dam was cracking. On Monday, I was called back into HR. But this time it wasn't just Doreen. There was a man in a suit. Stern. Corporate. Introduced himself as internal counsel. And I knew this had gone way beyond just Shannon. He asked questions. Lots of them. About timelines. Responsibilities. What Shannon had promised versus what she delivered. Whether I had documentation of her saying things off the record. I gave them everything. Emails. Slack chats. Danielle's timeline. Monica's testimony. The changing titles. The erased responsibilities. He took notes. A lot of notes. Then he said, "We'll be placing Shannon on administrative leave pending further review. You're not to contact her. She won't be contacting you." I froze. I hadn't expected them to actually do anything. But they did. And for the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe. But then, the bomb dropped. That afternoon I got a call from the recruiter at the new job. "Hi Maria. Just wanted to update you on your application." My heart soared. Until she said, "We got your reference back from Shannon. It was not exactly what we were hoping for." My blood ran cold. She had already submitted it. Before HR got involved, I asked, "Can you tell me what she said?" The recruiter hesitated. Then she sighed and said, "Let's just say she painted you as unstable, disloyal, and unable to manage conflict." I wanted to scream, but I stayed quiet, because something inside me said, "Don't react yet. There's still time to turn this around." I thanked the recruiter and hung up. And then I made one more call. To HR. To Doreen. I told her what Shannon had done. The timing. The sabotage. And I ended with, "If I lose this job offer because of her lies, this becomes legal. Not just internal." She didn't argue. She said, "We'll get back to you." And I waited. Do you think Shannon's lies will cost Maria her dream job? Or will the truth finally break through? Let me know in the comments. Because what happens next will flip this story on its head. The moment I hung up with Doreen from HR, I knew I was in dangerous territory. Shannon had already submitted her reference. And it was poisoned. But now HR knew she'd done it during an ongoing investigation, knowing it could cost me the job. That wasn't just shady. It was retaliation. And HR couldn't sweep it under the rug anymore. At least, I hoped they wouldn't. 3 days passed. 3 agonizing days. No word from the recruiter. No update from HR. And no idea whether Shannon's lies had succeeded in closing that door forever. Then just as I was starting to lose hope, I got a voicemail. It was from the hiring manager at the new company. "Hi Maria, we reviewed everything again. Call us back when you get a chance. We'd like to talk." I called them immediately, hands shaking. And this time, the tone had changed. They'd received a follow-up. Not from Shannon, but from HR. And from Monica, who had gone out of her way to submit a second reference, sharing how I handled projects, led cross-functional teams and stayed level-headed under pressure. The hiring manager told me, "We were concerned, but honestly, after speaking to your former colleague and getting the full picture, it's clear your old workplace had its own problems." Then he said the words I'd been dying to hear for weeks. "We'd like to offer you the position." I nearly burst into tears. It was happening. A new job. A real escape. But part of me wasn't ready to celebrate. Not yet. Because even though I'd won the battle, Shannon was still at the company. Still collecting a paycheck. Still skating by. And I wasn't going to let her get away with it. On my second to last day, HR called me in one final time. This time, Doreen didn't smile. She just said, "We've concluded our investigation. Thank you for your cooperation." I asked her, "What happens now?" She hesitated. Then quietly replied, "Shannon's behavior was found to violate multiple company policies. Her employment has been terminated." I felt my knees go weak. Fired. The woman who denied me raises for 3 years. The one who tried to erase my work. The one who smeared my name behind closed doors. Was gone. But that's not the twist. The real twist was what I found on my desk later that afternoon. A letter. No name on the envelope. Just my name. Inside was a handwritten note. In Shannon's handwriting. "Maria, maybe you're proud of what you've done. But let me tell you something. This company was never going to choose someone like you long-term. You're not one of them. You never were. You can leave. But you'll always be replaceable. And one day you'll see just how far loyalty could have taken you." My hands trembled. Anger, disgust, and disbelief tangled in my chest. Even after everything, even knowing she'd been caught, she couldn't help herself. No apology. No accountability. Just venom. But the difference now? It didn't sting anymore. Because I had something she'd never understand. Dignity. I left that company the next morning. Not quietly, but proudly. Co-workers clapped. Some hugged me. A few whispered their own stories of being held back by Shannon. And as I walked out for the last time, I realized Shannon had tried to erase me. But all she did was give me the push I needed to level up. 2 months into the new job, I felt like I could finally breathe again. Real feedback. Fair pay. A team that saw me. No backhanded comments. No manipulative games. Just growth. And peace. But the story wasn't quite over. Because one evening my inbox pinged. A LinkedIn message. From a name I didn't recognize. The subject line? About Shannon. The message came late, just past 9 p.m. From a man named Elijah. I didn't recognize the name. Didn't know the face. Didn't share any mutual connections. But the subject line stopped me cold. About Shannon, she did it to me too. My heart thudded against my chest as I opened it. His message was long, thoughtful, precise. He introduced himself as a former project manager from another division of the company. Apparently he'd left 2 years before I started. And his reason? Back then she had transferred into his department temporarily, just for a few quarters, to help improve performance. But what she actually did, according to Elijah, was systematically pit team members against each other. She took credit for wins, blamed others for failures, and when he pushed back, she accused him of being aggressive and emotionally erratic. Sound familiar? Elijah had been forced out quietly without scandal, but with enough shame to keep him silent. Until now. He said, I saw your story making quiet waves on our company's Slack alumni channel. Some people are calling you brave. Some are saying you just did what we all should have done. He attached screenshots, Slack logs, performance charts, even one email where Shannon recommended Elijah's demotion, using eerily similar language to what she'd written about me. My hands trembled as I scrolled through it all. I wasn't just part of a pattern. I was part of a legacy Shannon left behind, one built on sabotage and silence. And it didn't stop with Elijah. Within a week I got 2 more messages. One from Harsha, a woman Shannon had reportedly mentored, only to replace with a younger, cheaper intern once budget cuts hit. And one from Carla, a data analyst who said Shannon made her work late for months, then accused her of time mismanagement during a performance review. 3 separate people. 3 different departments. Same exact tactics. I didn't know what to do with all of it. I wasn't at the company anymore. I wasn't obligated to act. But deep down, I knew I had to. Because people like Shannon don't stop unless someone forces them to. So I reached back out to Doreen from HR. I sent everything, Elijah's emails, the screenshots, the stories. And I asked one question. Did your investigation include any of this? No answer for 2 days. Then finally, an internal legal rep emailed me back. Thank you for your submission. We will be reopening aspects of the case for further review. That's when I made a decision that scared even me. I posted my story anonymously on a public workplace review site. Not naming names. Not naming companies. Just facts. But the reaction was immediate. Comments poured in. Some said, this happened to me too. Others said, I think I know exactly who you're talking about. And then one caught my eye. I worked under someone like this for 6 months. She was removed, then rehired by another department. If you're who I think you are, thank you. Wait, rehired? That couldn't be right. Shannon was fired, wasn't she? The next day I made a burner LinkedIn profile and started digging. And what I found made my stomach drop. Shannon had updated her profile. Not with former manager. Not with seeking opportunities. But with a new job title. Still at the same company. Different division. New role. She hadn't been fired. She'd been quietly moved. Reassigned. Like a problem they didn't want to solve. Just hide. I felt sick. All that evidence. All those stories. And instead of true accountability, they let her slip away. I wanted to scream. But instead I did something better. I wrote a letter. A real one. And I sent it directly to the CEO's office. No threats. No drama. Just the facts. With attachments. With timelines. With a closing sentence that read, "If this is who represents your leadership, I worry for everyone still under her." Days passed. Then weeks. No reply. Until finally, I got a call. Not from HR. But from a whistleblower line. They wanted to know everything. And they said someone senior had forwarded my report up the chain. All the way up. They couldn't share much. But they said internal audits were underway. That my case had sparked something. And they'd be in touch. Now I wait. Knowing I might have finally lit a fire under the right chair. But let me ask you this. Why do you think companies protect people like Shannon? Why is it easier to silence the victim than remove the abuser? Let me know what you think in the comments. The truth comes out in a way that no one, not even I, saw coming. 3 weeks after I sent the letter to the CEO's office, I'd all but given up. No calls. No emails. No signs. Just silence. But then late one Friday night I got a call from an unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. Then I listened. And froze. It was a woman's voice. Calm. Precise. Clear. "Hi Maria. I don't know if you remember me. I'm Layla. I used to work in ops. We never spoke directly, but I was on a few cross-department calls with you. I wanted to tell you something. I'm not sure if I'm even allowed to tell you this. But I found something." She left her number. And I called her back the next morning, heart pounding. Layla worked in compliance. Quietly. Behind the scenes. And when my letter reached the CEO's office, it didn't just vanish. It triggered a deep review of past misconduct reports. On paper, Shannon had no official complaints. But off the record, there were 7. 7 employees across 5 years had reported her, anonymously through surveys, exit interviews, or internal notes. And all of it had been buried. Labeled as personality conflicts or performance friction. No follow-up. No escalation. Just quietly archived and forgotten. Till now. Layla told me she'd reopened those reports. And she found something damning. A spreadsheet. Buried in old HR files. It tracked department performance scores over time, Shannon's teams included. And next to her name was a comment in red font. Read. "Document issues. Keep off leadership track." Whoever wrote that, clearly, knew she was a problem. But instead of removing her, they let her drift sideways. Out of sight. Out of liability. Out of responsibility. Layla told me she had printed everything. Not to leak it. Not to expose the company. But because she knew deep down they were going to try to erase it all again. And she wasn't going to let them. I didn't know what to say. Layla was risking everything, her job, her future, just to make sure the truth wasn't lost. And then she asked me something that caught me off guard. "Do you want to take this public?" I sat with that question for a long time. Because yeah, part of me did. Part of me wanted the world to know exactly who Shannon was, and what the company had done to protect her. But another part of me just wanted peace. And then something unexpected happened. My new job, the one I had fought so hard to get, they invited me to speak at a leadership summit. They wanted me to share my experience. Not the drama. Not the details. But how I found my voice. How I navigated conflict. How I rebuilt myself. And I said yes. That night I wrote the speech of my life. I didn't name names. But I told the story. Of 3 years of silence. Of raises denied. Of a smear campaign meant to destroy me. And how I learned that silence is not professionalism. That courage doesn't always look like shouting. It sometimes looks like documenting, emailing, reporting, again and again. Until someone finally listens. After the speech, a young woman from another company came up to me. Tears in her eyes. He said, "Thank you. I'm dealing with someone like her right now. I didn't think I was allowed to fight back." And right then I knew. I didn't need revenge. I didn't need to ruin Shannon. I had already won. Because while she was hiding in some dusty office corner, clinging to whatever title they gave her, I was standing in front of a room full of future leaders. Being seen, being heard, being whole. A few days later, Layla messaged me again. Short and simple. She's gone. For real this time. They made it official. No internal move. No sideways escape. Just done. Let me ask you something. If you were me, if someone tried to burn your career to the ground, would you still take the high road? Or would you take them down piece by piece? I'm really curious what you'd do. Comment below. About 2 months after Layla's final message, after Shannon's departure was confirmed, after the storm had settled, I got an email from someone unexpected. It wasn't from my old company. It was from a conference board. Apparently, my leadership summit speech had made the rounds. Someone had recorded it, posted a clip online, and it went viral. Now they wanted me to be a panelist on a topic I never thought I'd speak about publicly. Toxic management and the cost of silence. They said they were looking for real stories, real voices, people who had been through the fire and come out stronger. And here I was, not just invited, but headlining. When I walked into that hotel ballroom weeks later, my heart was pounding. The room was full, hundreds of people all staring up at the stage waiting for something real. And I gave it to them. I told them everything. Not about Shannon by name, but the pattern, the overlooked reports, the silencing of ambition, the casual cruelty disguised as feedback. And then I said something I hadn't even planned. I was fired for trying to leave a job that refused to value me. But that was the greatest gift they ever gave me. Because it led me to the version of myself who doesn't wait to be chosen. The room was quiet. Not out of boredom, but because everyone was listening. Like they saw their own stories in mine. After the panel, a man approached me. Professional, friendly, maybe late 40s. He introduced himself as Nathan. Said he worked at a mid-sized tech firm nearby. And then he said, "You don't know this, but 3 of my employees left after being managed by the same kind of leader you described. I've spent 2 years trying to understand what happened. Today I finally do." It hit me right then. This wasn't just about me. It never was. It was about every person who'd ever been denied a raise for years, then fired the moment they tried to escape. It was about every silent sufferer, and every whisper no one believed. I went home that night and cried. Not because I was sad, but because, for the first time, I felt free. Weeks later, I got one more surprise. I was at work, focused on a new client pitch, when my manager popped by and said, "Hey Maria. Small thing, someone sent a letter here for you. No return address. Looks handwritten." Confused, I opened the envelope, and inside was a note. Just one line. "Maybe you were right all along." No signature. But I knew. I stared at that note for a long time. I don't know if Shannon meant it as an apology, or a final dig. Maybe both. But it didn't matter. Because whatever power she once had over me was gone. That note is tucked away in a drawer now. Not out of fear, but as a reminder of how far I've come, of what I survived, and of the person I refused to become. So to anyone watching this who's been told they're too emotional, too ambitious, or not loyal enough, just for wanting to be paid fairly, you're not the problem. You never were. And if you're still stuck in that toxic job wondering if it's really that bad, let me be the voice you need to hear. It is. You deserve better. Drop a comment if this story hit home. And tell me, what would you have done in my place? I read every word, and your stories matter too. But sometimes, the one thing they don't expect is that you'll rise and take everyone watching with you. Please support us in bringing more intense drama by clicking on the subscribe button.